1, 2.
Sugar cane sweet, but girl, your love is sweeter. Sobolo juice mixed with a little ginger. Oh girl, I wanna be with you, but you know they got enough time for me. I wanna live with you. I get it easy when I can't let go. Girl, you never know, so you gon' gossip. Man, them so far to find your love. Girl, you never know, so you gon' gossip. Man, them so far to find your love. Girl, you never know, you gon' gossip. Man, them so far to find your love. Girl, you never know, so you gon' gossip. Man, them so far to find your love. Match on your chin, now girl, don't talk. Got me like a thief in the night, long jaw. But you know, say, all of my niggas, them ball. Nothing you go ever need at all. Match on your chin, now girl, don't know. Taking it a break, and then me, I know the rush. Baby, if you want me, catch a rebel, mommy, say, with me. Yeah.
Show me a jigger, let me see. Let me see. And let me see the woman that is with. I put a couple $1,000 on your wrist. What's on your wrist? Mama, they can't touch you. I ain't never.
Testing. Testing. Yeah, that's good. Yeah, man.
I see this kind, babe. We do so kind things, make me feel some kind way. You know I'm not just tryna get laid, cause I know some kind chicks do it for the right pay. Baby, make I fire you with my machine gun. 16 rounds, I be King Kong. Girlie, make I sample you my brand new song. Baby, love.
Oh girl, I wanna be with you, but you know they got enough time for me. I wanna live with you. I get the reason why I can't let go. Girl, you never know, so you come back so. Man, them so far to find your love. Girl, you never know, so you come back so. Man, them so far to find your love. Girl, you never know, you come back so. Man, them so far to find your love. Girl, you never know, so you come back so. Man, them so far to find your love.
You don't go to my even 100.
So we're here for this artist.
You make a bicycle and a boy will love.
This exhibition.
Not in my eyes, in my mouth, you don't tell her.
And
I ain't telling cause I give you umbrella. I thought we in this together. Give you my necklace, pendant. Give you my last cash, pendant. I show you my best friend.
I think so. We have 4 exhibiting artists here with us from the group. So to my right we have Jordan Roach, and we have Kyle Gooden, we have Tony Shea Green, and we have Dwayne Grant. So let me give you a little bit of bio on our esteemed guest and our panel here. So Jordan was born in December 2000. Jordan is a Jamaican photographer, passionate about stage photography and portraiture. She is a Christian who works to revive Jamaica's lost culture. She captures heritage, identity, and storytelling through her lens. Right, we have Kyle Gooden, who was born 2002. He's an artist living and working in Kingston, Jamaica. He's currently in his final year of studies at the Edna Manley College, where he's pursuing a bachelor's degree of fine arts in painting. His work explores the residual effects of colonialism on Caribbean people and the way that it continues to play an active role. Kyle works in paint, plaster, charcoal, collage, and pastels to produce drawings and sculptures. His work have been shown in Emergence and State of Mind exhibitions at the Cage Gallery and the Reparation Now exhibition at Creative Space Kingston earlier this year, right? So we have Tony Shea, born in the parish of Manchester. Tony Shea is a third-year art education major studying at the Edna Manley College of the Visual and Performing Arts. She has been awarded silver and bronze medal from the JCDC competitions. And we have Dwayne Grant, who's hailing from the parish of St. Catherine, Jamaica. Serve as a testament to, Dwayne Grant is a visionary artist whose captivating works serve as a testament to the power of art to transcend pain and transform darkness into light. Raised amidst poverty and violence, his childhood was a battlefield. Yet amidst the chaos and despair, art became his sanctuary, a refuge from the storm raging outside. With heavy abstract strokes infused with elements of expressionism and impressionism, Dwayne channels his innermost emotions onto canvas, transforming pain into poetry and anguish into art. Each painting is a window into his soul, inviting viewers to bear witness to his journey of self-discovery and healing. All right, so except for Dwayne, you are all current students. Your practice, so tell us about your practice and artistic development that you're forced, so your current practice and how you see yourself developing over the next 5 years. So anybody can really start. Okay.
Okay, so generally for my assignments, I focus on culture and or Jamaican heritage because since being a child and growing up, I've always loved the colors of Jamaica. I've always loved our culture and the brightness, the expression that comes behind our culture. And being in such appreciation, I've always included culture in my work, in everything that I do, sometimes in how I dress, and photography is just one way in how I express myself, and I believe that I should show where I'm coming from in my work. So with that being said, in the next 5 years, I really want to work in tourism. I see the tourism industry as one of the most important industries in Jamaica. And to be honest, to be a part of that and to be able to bring back to Jamaica the lost culture per se, or to bring to our tourists a better idea of where we are coming from as a country. So not just the hotels or the flag or the Rastafarian culture that we're known for, but everything else that made Jamaica, Jamaica.
I would begin by saying that I think the direction that I'm going on is to really continue this this practice of drawing that I've started. Over the past 2 years, I have really taken it on and really gotten back into the practice of drawing and exploring the thing that I'm thinking about through drawing. And I think that is where the focus is for me personally, with the direction of the work. I think outside, in terms of things I'm interested in doing, after graduating, there is time for rest, but there's also time for getting back into it. I would like to apply for some projects and programs, and hopefully continue.
Okay, cool.
Okay, so similarly to Jordan, growing up in the rural areas of Jamaica, I've been exposed to storytelling and folklore and all that stuff, and it's always inspired a lot of imagery and work that I do. I also normally use Japanese culture as well, because growing up, being the connections and certain things of elements that they use in their work that I really like. So starting my journey at Edna, I started exploring a lot with those. So blending both the Japanese and the Jamaican elements together to create my own. But I think currently now I'm starting to set my foot into what I really want to do, which kind of has me grounded for the future. So again, storytelling, and even after I've been working on a passion project, because I wouldn't ground myself as just being, because I do textiles and fiber, but I
Okay.
wouldn't ground myself as that's the only media that I explore.
Okay.
I do illustrations and all that other stuff. I've been wanting to work on a comic talking about the folklore and the stories of Jamaica, and it's been a passion project of mine. So that's also something I want to pursue uh, after I leave, and even throughout my textiles and further illustrations, showing that those elements of Jamaica and mixing them with the Japanese elements as well.
Okay. So, Dwayne, you're an alum, right? And you've decided to participate in this exhibition, right? And I think your works were very good in the exhibition. What made you choose to participate?
Well, basically, it was more so along the lines of being invited
Okay.
to, display works. Yeah, and also, based on the whole theme, it's a very attractive theme in a sense. Our blue period, also bringing it across, read the culture and its relevance. It's a very impactful exhibition based on what I've seen thus far. And, the works fit the narrative in a sense, given the whole emotions that come from, the originals. Picasso went through his turmoil, losing his friend and all of that. My pieces also, would be along the lines of loss and evicting certain
Okay.
or evoking certain emotions.
All right, very well. So, so the Cage Gallery, I think, is a very important space, right? And for students to have an experience of exhibiting, interacting with the crowd at the exhibition, right? So I want you guys to talk to me about that experience, right? What was it like, just socializing with the crowd, talking to people about your work?
I don't mind starting. It. Would you like? Sorry. Would you like to go?
And just to follow up, Kyle, and also if you could, at the end of that, right, if you could contrast that with the experience of class critiques, right, because it's two different spaces, right? So I think this is an important part of your experience, right? So if you could talk about that experience and then make a contrast to how class critique differs, or the similarities, whichever.
Well, I would start with critique and then go to the gallery.
Okay.
Because critique feels, at least in the painting department, critique tends to feel like an opportunity to sharpen one's sword. It's
Right.
not as focused on praise and that's not to say that constructive and positive criticism isn't given, but you're less focused on praising and more on how can this idea be improved. What are some things that you succeeded in, things that weren't so strong. So I think it's more critical, which
Right.
it should be. But when you get to the gallery, my experience it has been pretty awkward, because I find that it's weird, because you're working on this thing you're working on this piece for so long, and then it's presented. We don't have any say, so to speak, in how the audience or how the viewer responds.
Right.
Sometimes when you discuss it, like on Tuesday, sometimes some people get it, or some people get what you were going for, and then you hear something else that's like, oh, okay, well, I didn't see that, but I can see it now. Thank you. But it's a very different environment. Yeah.
Okay. Buddy.
So in terms of critiques, you hear more, you're hearing, okay, what works, what doesn't work, what you can go back to the drawing board and improve on, which is very vital information, especially if you're in the progress of the work.
Yeah.
So the difference with the exhibition now, it's the final work. This is the body that you're presenting to the world rather than the in progress or before you add on the improvements. And as Kyle said, sometimes like people might not see what you're trying to give the audience or you think the audience would perceive it as. But I think my experience, it was really good and also informative as well, especially for this piece that you're showing. One person was, we were having a good conversation about what I was trying to imply with that work. And even in this one, so this is obviously a self-portrait, and it's supposed to be self-appreciation and self-love. So it's like a celebration. And someone pointed out to me, but the expression that you're making is not very celebratory. But the thing is, I have a very serious looking face. When anybody sees me just sitting around the place, I'm just mean mugging. And people are like, what is wrong with you? But that's just who I am. And even growing up, people are like, fix up your face, man. Why you long up your face? Like, that's just how I am. And that's just what I wanted to celebrate.
Okay, cool. Jordan?
Well, for me, class critiques and the exhibition, two different things. So for class critiques, I'm generally used to my classmates, generally used to my teacher. My teacher understands my process. He or she understands where I was coming from for the entire process. Versus the exhibition, no one knows what the piece is about. No one knows what you are going for. They just come and they see the piece. Oh, this look nice. That's always the first thing. This look nice. And then that's when they go along and continue to ask questions. So what does this mean? Why did you use that color? So I'm not a fan of public speaking, believe it or not. But I was really uncomfortable when people started asking me questions because I knew what I wanted to say, but my mouth didn't want to give what I wanted to say. So I was really nervous. So that's something that I can work on. But I was very excited because this was my first ever exhibition. And I was happy to know that I was chosen or asked to present my work.
Yeah, doing. So, I mean, you were a student not so long ago. And at this point, you've done quite a few exhibitions.
Yeah.
But if you could make that comparison, I think we would still love to hear your views on this.
All right. Given.
So one sec. What you could also, I mean, you predominantly exhibit paintings, but you weren't a painting major, and I think that might be important to point out.
Yeah, that is true. The major that I was doing was illustration, graphics, you know. But eventually, you kind of find a different path along the line, you know. Given that art is more so expressive in a sense. You know, I found a way to combine the illustrative qualities with the art of painting. So you try to find different ways to execute your thought process and getting it to manifest on canvas or whichever medium you so choose to execute. So, you know, given the earlier question and hearing the responses of my fellow panelists, it's more along the lines, thinking back to critique regarding classes. We don't really get that, you know, when doing shows, because you know that the show is the finale. Persons are going to come and they're going to absorb the works as they so see it, you know. But critique is something that you will learn to value over time as you grow as artists, because at the end of the day, when you are getting the constructive criticism, it builds you, you know. Right. It gives you this form of endurance, because you know that by putting out your most vulnerable pieces, you're putting out different parts of yourself. So you know that you're going to have to take comments, whether it be negative or positive, and you'll have to be prepared mentally for whatever comes with that. So in hindsight, your classmates are helping to curve you, as well as your lecturers. They're helping to curve you to prepare for your future. You know, so it's something that you really should value, because once you leave here, you're going to be that professional artist.
Yeah.
And you're not going to have persons like telling you, I don't like this, I don't like that, just off the bat, or why did you do this, why did you do that? Because at the show, they're just coming to absorb what they see. And you're going to, your works are going to be displayed in a sea of other artists' works as well. So it's going to be like this mass consumption of art, you know, versus if you actually do your own solo show. By then, you should have a strong fan base and persons that already know what you're capable of, and they will actually be following you for what they love to see, what you produce. You know, so it's a very crucial part of your career as an artist to enjoy your experience. That's
Yeah,
good.
and you touched on something I was thinking about, and because, for instance, Kyle, your work was part of a body of work, but then it was curated into a show. So then the viewer who you're talking to at the exhibition, they wouldn't understand a wider context of the work. So now you will have to be explaining this in a different way, and I think as you build on your experience and as you exhibit a lot more, similar to what Dwayne is saying, you find that you'll start to explain your work in different versions, in a sense, right? So so we have to give account for that as well. So all right, so move on to another question, right? So the title, Our Blue Period. It looks at the past and present as an intersection of history and the future. How does your work position itself in this intersection? And I mean, you can, so I would like for you to talk specifically about the work that was chosen for the show. And if it helps, you can widen that context with talking about your wider body of work. Cool?
As you mentioned before, sir, I've been looking at the remnants of colonialism that we see all the time.
Yeah.
And this all started for me in third year when I was looking at ruins, and particularly the ruins of the aqueduct up at Uimona.
Okay, right.
And I was thinking about the workers that that would have built that, and how they weren't really building it for themselves, they were really building it for someone else. And in a way, I connected that to our present day and how many of us are working and not necessarily enjoying the fruits of our labor. And so for this body of work that this work was a part of, I was exploring a personification of the tropics or the West Indies, and that for me is embodied in the figure on the right.
Okay.
And so thinking about a personification of the tropics and how would I represent the tropics as an individual, and represent the history of the tropics in one individual. And so I was thinking about images from the transatlantic slave trade, which is where that stamp of the body comes in, and I've been exploring using that on the figures that I've been using as a way of going back to that history. But I also included the colors on the figure on the right as a reference to slavery again. But there's also the use of turquoise, and for that I was referencing Yori Minaya and her use of turquoise in her prints, because she's a Dominican artist and she makes a lot of fabric with prints that are covered in tropical flora and fauna. But she uses turquoise in a way that very effectively conveys where we're talking about. And so that was really what went into that figure on the right. And then for the figure on the left, I was thinking about whiteness and the colonial identity, and thinking about ways that that's been portrayed. And Househead, the character from John Cuna, came into the work as a way to reference the planter class without necessarily using clothes or things like that, to just slightly reference the idea of the planter by using the great house on the head of that figure with the powdered wig and this Caucasian complexion. So I was using a lot of different images at the same time that reminded me of whiteness and that personification of a colonizer.
Okay.
And that's kind of what this body of work was about.
Thanks. Anybody else?
So for my pieces, it was more along the line of me trying to incorporate or, well, from my childhood. So I wasn't used to like straw brooms and coconut brush to clean the floor and all of that. So I wanted to incorporate what I experienced as a child with what happened in the past. So in the past, they actually used the coconut brushes and all of those stuff. That was just an example to say. For example, can you put back the washerwoman photo, please? Right. So if you pay attention, it was deliberate for me not to necessarily use a straw pan or a wooden pan, which would have been more culturally or historically accurate, because I grew up with everything being plastic. Everything was plastic. You're washing outside, you're hanging up plastic pins, plastic pan. So I wanted to be more modern with my history per se. So I've grown to appreciate the history, but I don't want to stick to generally shooting exactly how the history is supposed to be, because I feel as if everybody has been focusing on history. What is going to be the different component, or what are you going to do that's different from what everyone else is doing? So that's just for one photo. The other photo, A Taste of Salt. For this one, this is my favorite piece. I actually wanted to focus on slaves and how in the past the washerwomen or the slave mothers got a few opportunities to have one little taste of freedom now and again, like in the fields, or probably when they're on the farm, they probably get to wander for a little while, or it's just an example. I wanted to use water because of the vastness of the ocean and the openness. It allows you to feel a bit of freedom. It allows you to feel like you're not captive. And with using the ocean, it also showed the salt, which is why the piece is called A Taste of Salt, to play on the whole idea of a taste of freedom. So for the exhibition, to be honest, she asked me, and I was iffy because she also mentioned the artist talk, and I was like, I'm gonna have to talk, but okay, I'll do it, because I realized that not only is my work resonating with me, it's resonating with others, which means that I'm doing something that actually makes sense. So for my work to be in this exhibition, it really proves that the concept of modern versus history, or the combination of modern and historical factors coming together, is really playing a part in what I am trying to do.
Thank you, Charlotte. Anybody else?
Okay, so for this piece, again, I was looking at self-identity and self-appreciation. So growing up, I used to have a lot of self-image issues. So being mocked for like my lips or my hair or stuff like that. And growing up thinking, oh, I'm going to get surgery when I get older and reduce the size of my lips because I don't like how I look, and along those lines. And my hair, I used to have a lot of hatred for my hair. Like pulling it out, combing it, and it was short, I didn't like it, and it was bad to the point that every time I was pulling out my hair, I would break my hair, I would damage my hair. And to come full circle, especially when I started locking my hair, even when it was short, I started gaining appreciation for it. I loved the fuzzy, untamed look that I had, even though my cousin who was doing my hair, she's like, you know what, man, neaten it up for you. And I'm like, no, I like it this way. I started gaining appreciation for my features, who I am, and stuff like that. And even now, a lot of you know, like, I like to style my hair and stuff like that. So it's a big way of even like black girls and stuff like that, us not appreciating ourselves, especially growing up and people telling us, like, even on teaching practice, because I'm currently on teaching practice, I hear the students like, oh, she black like this, or still, I'm like, we're still doing this? Like, the darker students still get picked on, whether male or female. Or even when we're drawing, they're like, Miss, me don't want the nose too big. The nose look too big for your miss. They want the nose small. Like, we're still kind of removing the blackness of ourselves subconsciously. And that was what I was doing when I was younger. And I've gained an appreciation for myself currently. And so this is like a love letter to myself, that you are beautiful. Right.
Yeah, and I find it interesting that people would still question why artists are still dealing with issues of colonialism in spaces like this, when this is still the mindset, right? We still see people bleaching, right? People are still bleaching within the culture.
Yeah, people, I remember when I went home and I was walking and I saw a guy. I was like, who is that brown youth? Never had seen him before. Somebody who was darker than me. Him, his cousins, good amount of his family. You have a household, everybody a bleach.
Wow, that's very interesting. So, Dwayne, the question to you as well, you know, Blue Period, you know, which looks at the past, the present, and, you know, the alignment with the future, that intersection. How do you see your work functioning within that role?
Well, regards to time, you know, that time is something that keeps going on and on. It's unlimited, you know. So in this case, it's more so along the lines of the universal feeling, which would be your feelings, you know, the emotions that we evoke, the ones that we use on a day-to-day basis. You know, this is something that we will always have with us, our feelings. Now, regarding the works and the theme, you know, Blue Period by Picasso is that era of his pain and how he executed and how he put them out. You know, my pieces are similar in that aspect, and it has been influenced by the Blue Period, given that he suffered loss of losing his friend, you know, and most of those works at that point in time were to depict certain feelings that were, you know, that were being felt at that time. The works now, each of them have their own different or individual feeling, because these two pieces are actually a part of a series of works that each evoked different emotions. This one in particular, Blue Boy Fly, it has, you know, inspiration from different elements, which it could also be a case of, okay, it actually matches the theme in its entirety, but I wouldn't necessarily limit it to that, because this one in particular, you know, was because the name itself was inspired by a Don that died. It was a 20-year-old Don in Denhamtown that died. His name was Blue Boy, our boy Blue, you know. And there's also the aspect of kids that witnessed the murder. So the whole concept and the whole reference for this piece was that. So it is more to be the language that depicts or represents feeling loss, the loss of life, the loss of a loved one. And that emotion is evoked in the expression of the piece. Regarding the whole concept of colonialism as well, we realize that there's a lot of black on black crime. And, you know, as the fellow panelists would have said, that there's a lack of self-love, you know, a lack of appreciation for ourselves as black people.
Yeah.
That we tend to want to, we hate ourselves so much that we tend to want to take it out on our fellow brothers and sisters. You don't really see that love and appreciation for each other as you may see with other ethnicities. And that is really something to be discussed and really something to be looked at for what it is, you know, the lack of love. So these pieces are more so to depict the emotions, a universal type of truth that we all feel and all face, loss.
Yeah, and I mean, there's so much that's really embedded within our work. And, you know, as we said before, a lot of times when you're talking about the work, you'll be talking about different versions of the work. I didn't know all of this was also in this piece, but as you said it, I could start to feel some of that. And we live in a society that is so heavy. There's so many things working against us, right? And that kind of brings me to my next question, of society, institutions, and how we function, right? How do you guys think the college is preparing you for the kind of art career that you're envisioning? And Dwayne, since you have the mic, right? You've been in the field, right? You're painting, you weren't a painting major, but you're still doing things within your field, right? How has the college played a role in that artist that you've become?
The college has played a major role.
All right, and before you go any further, a lot of students here like to cuss the college out, right? And I can understand some of your grievances. But anyway, Dwayne, continue.
Yes, the college has played a major role in my development. You realize that the artist that is self-taught, there's a purity with the artist that is self-taught, but we have a certain access that many don't have, and that is we are surrounded by a lot of experienced individuals, a lot of experienced lecturers, and also you cannot forget the whole networking opportunity as well. As you see your classmates, each of you are helping each other to grow, to be the best version of yourselves in terms of what you plan to evoke in the near future. The star that you will become, as you already are, know that you are stars in your own right. So the college itself helps you to curve that talent, helps you to be the better version of yourself without you guys actually knowing right now. But when the time comes and you actually leave the college, you will see the importance of actually having that education and that exposure. And you can never stop learning as an artist as well. You'll grow, you'll constantly experiment with different materials and tools, and as you learn other things and meet new people and go to different places, you'll find that all of these things help to contribute you to you being a better version of yourself. So appreciate all of the experiences that you have here now, and also know that it is something that is very, very essential, and it is very much paramount that you do, try to understand where your lecturer's point of view, and also learn to apply the little things that you learn here and there in terms of every interaction with each other as well, and evoke the best of what you can evoke as artists. Be vulnerable, don't be afraid to bleed on the canvas, so to speak, and just show what you have. Let the world decide if they like what you have to give or not. Remember that there are millions of people out there that will be seeing your work, and they will all have their own interpretation. If you don't see the value in your pieces, you may be surprised that somebody might see your work and say it's worth millions, and indeed do spend the millions on your piece. So remember that and keep that in mind.
You guys want to repeat the question?
Oh, no.
Okay. Thanks.
Okay. So, I think coming to Edna Manley has really helped me to truly unlock what my focus is. I didn't necessarily know. I knew I always wanted to do photography, but I didn't know what I wanted to focus on. I didn't know what my passion in photography was. Didn't know what type of photography I wanted to do. I didn't know anything. I just knew that I loved cameras and I had an eye for taking good photos. But coming to school also gives you a lot of discipline. So having the deadlines, having teachers tell you that you need to fix this and you need to fix it by a certain time, it also helps you with clients outside. So with me working with a client, because I take clients as well as school, working with a client, deadlines from school helps me to understand that, hey, it's the same thing. If a client expects to receive something at a certain time, whether or not I'm feeling creative, if I'm having a block, if I'm having everything that is stressing me out in life, the work must be done. So school gives discipline. It also allows you to be able to fully express yourself without people thinking, you're so weird. You're such a weird person. Like generally growing up, everybody thought I was weird. Coming here, everyone is weird. I'm fine. And I'm fine. I'm accepted. Everyone works together, and we are okay. We live well because we're all creative, so we all understand the space. We all understand how each of us think. Even if it's a case where you're a painter, I'm a photographer, he's a whatever person, it allows us to all connect with our different mediums in the exact same way. And with that being said too, what if it's a case where for my piece, I need tribal markings or I need some African painting to be done on my model that now allows me to connect to a painter. Through my work, somebody can see my photo and say, who did the paintings for this? That person is brought up, that person is contacted. So the same thing that you were saying about connections and being able to market. It, to me, and no, this is not sponsored. To me, the best decision that I've made in the past years is to come to Edna Manley, to actually learn how to curve, to actually learn how to curve and understand my passion as a creative.
Okay. Pursue your passion. That's not big.
I think that the college is playing a very crucial role in our development and the development of art and the cultural and creative industries and all of that. But I think the college could be definitely doing a lot more for the students. I think that the students are very supported and fortunate when it comes to lecturers, actually, and the staff that we're able to engage with here. I just wish that the staff and the students were supported more. And that's not to say that the college doesn't do anything. No, but the college could be doing a lot more, even in terms of just infrastructure. We've noticed that a lot of things have closed since I came here in first year. A lot of things have shut down or are no longer working or have been discontinued, and sometimes it's a bit unclear why. You know, why can't these things be fixed? And so I think that if we claim to support students and we claim to support artists, it has to start here, and we have to have studios with working lights and fans, and they have to be supported. They have to be able to create in a positive environment. So I think that the college does good, but it could be doing a lot better.
Mm-hmm. All right, Carl. Let's say.
All right, last person. Okay, so I've always wanted to come to Edna from a little pitney, seeing the advertisements on TV, and I said, Mommy, I want to go to Edna. She's like, if you work for it, you can go. I've always known I wanted to do art, but I never found or grounded myself, and I think coming to Edna has really solidified that for me. I've been given the room to experiment, explore, learn a lot of new things, new information, communicate with different people from all walks of life that I've never been able to talk to, coming from way back a bush and things. So it's just, it has helped me become more open, and I'm more open to learn and try new things. And also as an educator, I think that my experience here has helped me to prepare me for the classroom and to help nurture the next generation of artists and the artists that might potentially come here as well. So I'm very grateful for all of that and for everyone here. Yeah, so.
All right, thank you very much. And Kyle, you touched on something that was one of my questions, but you know, I have to look at the time we have, and we have to absolutely involve our audience, right? Because I wanted to ask, you know, how do you think the college could better equip you, right? But I think we're gonna need a lot more time for this discussion, right? So maybe we need okay, so. All right, there's a few shouts in the audience
Yes.
that I should
It would
let
take-
that question
It would
stand.
take a lot of time, Mr. Bailey.
Okay, it will take a lot
It
of
would
time.
take a lot of time.
All right, so let's run to the last questions for the panel, right? So how do you see the contemporary Jamaican art scene? What are your views on that? So just give me a feedback on what do you think it is, you know, just your perspective, because that's the space you are moving into.
So recently, this year and last year as well, one of the things that stood out to me was a lot of the older artists who had put on solo shows. I mentioned that to say that in the contemporary space, and especially since COVID, I think a lot of contemporary artists have been able to use social media, use their platforms, whatever they have, and use their networks, and have been able to ride that wave in a different way than some of the older artists might have been able to. I mentioned Raymond Watson, I mentioned, Judith Salmon has her solo show at Olympia right now, for example. Margaret Chen as well. So I was thinking, I was seeing those older artists and thinking, it's very nice to see that injection of an older sense of taste. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because they come with a very different aesthetic sensitivity than we might have, than Gen Z, for example. You know, because we're seeing internet and memes, so I think that in the contemporary space, there's a nice balance right now between contemporary practicing artists who are putting on shows. Resume the Struggle. There's the Biennial at the Gallery right now, where we're also seeing a lot of new media down there, and that's encouraging for persons who aren't working traditionally. But I think that right now the space is very dynamic.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's quite positive. All right, anybody else?
Not gonna say when I go to a gallery, I understand and appreciate every single thing that's in the gallery, but reading up on these artists and actually seeing where they're coming from or learning where they're coming from, it's tea, guys. It's tea. It's so interesting. It really speaks to us as a generation and how we are still connected to what has happened in the past. And I see a lot of persons including different aspects of their childhood, different aspects of their culture in their work. And it's obvious, as I explained before, I'm just happy to know that even in the modern days, people are still connected to their past, they're still connected to their roots. And even though I have a deeper appreciation for the cultural pieces that are on display or the more historic pieces that are on display, there's a general appreciation for people who are actually still doing art. Because to me, art, it's somewhat lost. Not gonna say it's gone completely, but the appreciation for what people can do, it's not really there anymore. And it's rare to find people who genuinely appreciate artists and their work and not just say, this looks nice and leave it there. And it's not really, it's kind of rare to also find persons who not only support you, but they're willing to go with you on your journey, because they don't generally understand the concept of being an artist. It's not just having a talent. It comes with a lot behind it. And I just appreciate and love the work that is being done in art nowadays from our young persons. Yes, I appreciate the art that's done from our older artists, but back in that time, I don't think we had much creative persons that were really fueled, because in that time, if you didn't work at a bank, you weren't a lawyer, you weren't a doctor, it wasn't really a career that was fueled by parents or something that was pushed. So I don't think you had as much artists back then than what you have now. So I'm really happy to also see that parents are also pushing their children to be more creative and be more expressive, and seeing expression all around, whether it's the murals or the art pieces in the galleries and everywhere. It makes me feel good to be a Jamaican.
Sounds good. You guys? Okay, cool.
Well, regarding the whole aspect of like contemporary art being appreciated in the space, it is going to be a long road, but you have to remember that as artists we have a duty to the people. in a sense. It's a very big responsibility, believe it or not. We have the ability to shift the culture, with messages and the different types of expression that we all convey. We give a voice to the voiceless. So it's a big responsibility within ourselves. The culture may fight against creativity, but at the end of the day, you were chosen, by the divine to be an artist and exhibit your talent in such a way that you can interact with persons around you, shift your environment through your whole talent. So it's a different form of communication, but it does get the message across, whether subconsciously or not. It's somewhat a form of what you'd call it, braille. So even if you're around close-minded persons, at the end of the day, you have the ability to actually open their mind, because the mere fact that you're able to create, you're going to generate conversations around your piece. Each piece that was in the show, or is still in the show, generates a different form of conversation. So even if they do look at the work and say, this is nice, it's still something that can be expounded upon, because that person that says it's nice is saying it's nice to show someone else. And that person, it may trigger something in their brain and they show someone else. And it goes on and on and on, and before you know it, you gain notoriety. And from notoriety, you gain impact, and from impact, you gain influence. You get what I'm saying? So it's something that it may be underlooked or underestimated, but the simplest thing as even knowing L.A. Lewis then, so to speak, where he wrote his name all over the place, and it gave him notoriety. Basquiat started out that way as well with Seymour. So persons are seeing, they're learning from what you put out there, and it's triggering something inside their brain. And even if it's not a case where they're consciously aware of this, it is actually waking up something within their subconscious mind. So that's
all right, man. Oh, yeah, Kyle, go ahead. Really
Well, I just wanted to say something in response to that as well. Because remember, notoriety is one thing, but I don't necessarily know if that should be our focus. Because you mentioned the responsibilities that we have. And I think the emphasis should be placed not necessarily on our notoriety per se, but maybe the notoriety of the things that we're talking about. And just to say, I don't think that art is dead per se, but I definitely think that it's under threat right now. Art as we've experienced it, with new things like AI, and so it's definitely under threat. And we have a responsibility to be conscientious about what we are making and to support it with research, and with our own informed making. So that's that. Yeah, that's what I'd like to say.
I mean, art has always been under threat. The camera put art under threat. Art has always been under threat, right? But what we take from this is that you guys have a vibrant art scene that you are coming into, right? So I think with that, you really need to take your studies here very seriously, right? And at this point, I want to open up the floor to the audience if you have any questions for the panel, right? Ms. Campbell, and then, yeah. Okay.
Thank you. I do have a question, and I'd love to, at some point, maybe hear from other persons, the panel and others. How do you said, as a charge, you said remain vulnerable. And, I ask, how do you creatives remain vulnerable in this 2025 Jamaica and maybe Caribbean and maybe the world? That's my question. How do you actually remain vulnerable?
Well, to actually answer the question, I'm looking at it from different perspectives. Is it a case of like the fact that the culture may be desensitized to a lot of things? Or is it more so along the lines that we suppress different parts of ourselves without bringing it to the light of the public?
Thanks. I think the two are linked because why the urge to suppress? Something in the socialization is doing that.
Yes, yes.
But if I may just chip in here, we find that the tides are really changing politically, right? Where freedom of speech, that's even under threat more than art. You know, so for an artist to be really true and organic about their process, you know, whatever you say can really affect you in this time where we see like even the government, right, in not just Jamaica but different countries, you know, they can get at you for whatever statement you're making, right? We've seen where media is being challenged on this idea of freedom of speech as well, you know, so I think practicing art in this time is quite a vulnerable practice.
I think I would want to insert along with vulnerability. I'd want to insert honesty more than vulnerability, because when you're honest, it just is what it is. So I think we do have a society that promotes facades and putting up fronts, and I think if there was more effort put into being honest about just our individual lives and like what we're going through, instead of trying to be a thing or trying to put up a front, that honesty might bring out the vulnerabilities that we might all experience.
You know, so it's really a tricky space nonetheless. So I don't know if that answered your question to some extent, right? So I think we can have just 2 more questions. We have 2 more questions? Sorry, Alo, and then we'll take yours, and then we're gonna have to.
Okay. Concerning the point the young guy said about the school not doing much, do you understand? Yeah. If I'm right, you understand, right?
Well, I didn't say that the school wasn't doing much, and I'm sensitive
No.
about the semantics.
No.
The school
No.
isn't doing much versus the school could be doing more.
Yeah, no, actually, I really get what you said, you understand. But if you remember, if some of you were in the last artist talk at the library that I do mention, do you understand? What makes a school great is not the school itself, and it is not the name. It is the students that make the school great. Do you understand? And secondly, again, that I mentioned the other time, that I say, because when I came here too, see, there are certain things I see that is a little bit different, that I think if Edna Mali can't emulate such things, do you understand? Definitely it will make not just the school, the student, the lecturer, and everybody great. And secondly, again, one thing again I noticed is that, you see, if you're short of material, you'll be short of knowledge. If you're short of, material, you definitely be short of knowledge. If you have abundance of material, you will experiment, and you will be getting the best. And thirdly, again, do you understand? What as a student, the past, since the creation of Edna Mali, what are they been giving back to the society or giving back to the school? I mentioned the other time, I said, in my own culture of education, every student have a special project that is done or leaving behind for the school. All those projects, projects, whether you're in painting, or in sculpture, you're in graphics, you're in photography, do you understand? There will be a special one that speak to your research. Well monitored by your supervisor, do you understand? I'm going to leave behind. And what does that mean is that, see, it gets to a certain stage. You can't, you see, the school itself, or even though the government itself cannot really give you everything you want.
But you're saying we really have to make an
You
effort
understand.
to pull
You
this
see,
out.
so what
So
I
the
mean
thing
is that,
hold on, because we're really running out of time here, right? I think we
No,
really
hold
need
on.
another platform
Hold on. See, I'm going to
to
conclude
really
it.
expound
I'm going
all
to
of this.
conclude it. Just a few seconds. Now, what I mean is that, you see, there is something we call the giving back. That giving back, it is a culture that always rotates. Some people
So I
have
think
to
we're
start
gonna have
it.
to explore some ways how we can really integrate some of this a lot more. So very quickly, our very last question, and then we really have to wrap up.
So my question was for your piece, Taste of Freedom. You mentioned not wanting to
Taste of salt.
Taste of Salt, my bad. You mentioned not wanting to stick to the exact representations, historical representations when capturing your work. How do you then maintain the truth of your culture if or when you decide to remove some of these elements?
Here. Okay. So.
Well, the basis of the piece was focusing on a washerwoman, and it's not something that you generally see in other cultures. You're not gonna go abroad and see a white woman, for example, in a washroom, in a plastic tub, with a wash brush, washing their clothes. It's not something that is ideal to every single culture. So with that being done, it signifies, for example, what my mom used to do when I was younger and I wore white uniforms. She had to hand wash them. So that is what I saw. Or for example, a better example is my grandma, because the photo is depicting someone of age. So seeing my grandma in her nightie or her frock washing my uniform, it wasn't necessarily to depict the slave washerwoman, but what the washerwoman has become. Because I believe in each and every one of our lives, we have our own washerwoman, or we are our own washerwoman. Because if I sit in front of a tub right now and I wash my children's clothes, I am a quote-unquote slave to my child. So the idea of slavery doesn't actually end. It's just that right now, with slavery, we have a choice whether or not we want to be the slaves. So that's how it comes out in the piece. That's why it's modernized. So it's not necessarily to show exactly what happened in the past, but it's to speak of our culture and what it continues to grow into.
All right, thank you very much. And you know, these conversations are never really brought to a full conclusion, because there's really a lot more to unpack in your response just now, right? But I guess that's all the time we have. And I want to thank all of the panelists, right? I want to thank all of you guys for being here. It would not happen without you being here, and I really appreciate that. Thanks everyone for coming out, and congratulations to the class that put this project on. I think it's been quite a success. Yeah. You know, I think there was some impression on the toes. Oh my God.